A minute. It takes a minute or so for all the things to come in, huh?
Yeah, it takes
Yeah,
takes
yeah, for sure.
a minute. Good afternoon, everyone, and glad to see you all again at our our IMCC event here in Canada. I'm Rick Sterling and with Western IM, and I appreciate all of you so very much for taking advantage of our IMCC events that we put on for our community across the country. The ARMA chapters are so well organized now, or many of them are quite well organized now, and they get us events that we can put on. I'm really pleased today to have somebody I call a good friend, Louis Eisen, on here to do the presentation. I always call Louis the policy whisperer. That's my term for Louis. We've known each other for more than a year or two, Louis, and I'm so pleased to have you on today to do your session. I'm not really going to introduce you as such because pretty much everybody kind of knows you. Uh, you're somewhat famous in the policy world, not only in Canada but in the U.S. and in other parts of the world as well. So you can maybe speak a little bit about yourself and what your session is going to look like today. And I'm just going to leave it and let you do it.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me
And
back.
I just wanted to introduce Troy Sawyer as well.
Oh, please.
Troy, who everybody kind of knows from our IMCC sessions, Troy is on his day off today and was here to make sure that the session ran smoothly. Troy, thank you so much for doing that for everybody today.
Yep,
And
as always,
so
Rick.
happy to have you on. And okay, I'm going to shut up now and let Lewis do his thing.
No problem. I say thank you for having me back. I wonder if I can just have people put in the chat where they're calling in from. There are two reasons we do that. One is so that we know what kind of expanse we have across the country, and also so the speaker knows who he can pick on when he needs to ask for volunteers to contribute. I see some names. Hello to all my colleagues that I know there. We have to. You want? I need to be able to share, right?
Yes.
Should be able to.
Yeah, set that up and
It's always comforting to me to see all the names that I know in the in the session.
so. But I probably should have actually set the share ahead of time. So you see, even seasoned people lose it. Okay, is that showing?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Okay, this is called Policies Matter, and this is a continuation of the last session you had. So, Rick, and I guess it was Dara and Ellie who
Yes.
presented on the
Yes.
principles. And my topic is how the principles relate to policy and values. So, in order to do that, we wanted the principles discussion to go with first. I do not have all the answers on this one. In fact, a lot of these are questions that I raise, and I'm not sure where we're going with it. So I thought I would give us a chance. We didn't have a lot of chance last time to have people respond to the new principles or talk about them. So I'm just going to give you a bit of context setting and present a couple things from my point of view about the principles and values. And then I'm going to open it up and give people a chance to see whether or not the principles, where they're going to fit in the scheme of things going forward. Certainly, we put a lot of work into it. Um, you do know me, so I don't really have to spend a lot of time on this. I'm a reformed lawyer, and I worked in the federal government for 17 years at hard labor until I was paroled and could leave. And since I've been teaching now policy writing workshops for 10 years now, how to frame rules in a way that reduces the resistance. Resistance is data. It tells you how your policy instrument is interacting with your organizational values. Now, I'm going to start with this. You probably recognize this was ARMA's new white paper from Rules to Reflex. If it's new, there may be some people here who haven't had it. I'm sure some of you have read it, but not everyone has read it. ARMA the ARMA raised the question last InfoNext in April in Savannah. How do we reach the holy grail, they asked, of information management and organization, which is to have it embedded as part of the culture? So instead of us hitting people over the head with it, how do we get it to be part of the way the organization runs, put it inside the DNA of the organization? And they did some group work there where they collected all kinds of information and they produced this report. And I'm a co-author of the report. So I had a small section of it. It was mostly Dara who did the heavy lifting there. And there's a section in there that talks about the why behind IG. And the why, I liked the way they worded this one here. It's not just why you should do it, what punishment you'll get if you don't, or why you fit into the cog of the organization, but how does it connect to your work and values and motivation for what you do? So that if we can connect you to the why, then we can really make real cultural change and not just a question of people, I say, beyond obedience, people just doing what we say because we say so. So here's the reality about the values question. I'm showing you here an example of a HR policy. And when I show this to most groups and you say, what does it look like HR is doing? What's the value here? And 9 times out of 10, they say to me, well, this is about control because they don't want to pay us if we're not coming in. That's what they say nine times out of 10, people say looking at that. But when you talk to the HR group, they are 100% in agreement. This is about safety. This is about, we want to take responsibility for when you're in the building and we care about your safety and we don't know you're in the building unless you swipe in and out. That's the connection. But until they make that clear, it's totally opaque to us. We're not in HR. We don't see that connection. So to us on the outside, it just looks like a control mechanism. And that's the problem that we really have in IM. When we throw things at people, say, here's a rule that you have, here's a policy statement, and we don't overtly connect it to the value, we're asking people to guess what this is about. Now, this sheet might look familiar to you if you've seen any of my other sessions. This is where we can map the value, the strategies, the organization, to policy standards, all the way down to the general supporting material. And we should be able to trace a line up from all the stuff we have into the values of the organization, or even above that into its mission. If I take that last example I showed you, our policy there really is, we're going to use a single date format across all systems. When I say policy, that's the line that we want people to go, good policy. I like that policy. It's worded in a way that everybody can, yes, we all should be doing that. Worded in a way that everyone can get behind it. And it's got a standard with a particular format. And in the procedures that will be written, there will be a statement that says, when you're entering this date, entering this thing, use the standard format that we have. When I ask people, why are you setting this rule? The typical response I get is something about standardization or consistency. The problem is that standardization and consistency are not values. I shouldn't say they're not, they are values, but they really aren't our values. That is, there are lots of things that we do not standardize at the organization. We might standardize the hardware we buy to gain an economy of scale. We might standardize the software because we're trying to build expertise in a certain area. We might standardize our hiring practices for fairness reasons. The values are economy of scale, expertise, and fairness. Standardization is simply a method of getting there. It's not the actual value. So standardization goes down here. And the question is, why are we standardizing this? We don't standardize people's chairs. We don't standardize the word. Not everybody's doing exactly the same work. Why are we standardizing this? And the typical answer, when you sit and think about it, is really this is about accuracy or clarity. That's why we're introducing a strategy of standardization. And accuracy is a value. One of the ways you can test a value is by asking if it completes the sentence, "We do not compromise on." So I could see if the organization said, "We do not compromise on accuracy," I can see that ringing true. Whereas if they say, "We do not compromise on standardization," that doesn't ring true. That's not true. Lots of things we do that we don't do standard. So standardization is simply a strategy we apply in some situations. Now, when you're trying to sell stuff to the rest of the organization, if I can call it that, this isn't just theory. It actually makes a difference. So some of you may know Jeff Ball, who's head of open government at the RCMP in Ottawa. And they had a push to get a lot of documents from all the different directors, DG's areas, to put the documents online in the Canada Open Government portal. And they made a policy that said, you got to put your documents online. And there was procedures about how to collect them and give them. And they went around, and for a long time, they said, this is about transparency. Okay, we need to be transparent, so we need to collect your documents. And everybody said, oh yeah, transparency, that's great. Oh, for sure, we'll send you documents. And no one ever did. So after 2 years, we rethought this. And we said, you know what? Transparency is simply a methodology. It's a strategy. What is the ultimate value behind being transparent here? Why do we want to be more transparent? And ultimately, and this took some time, but ultimately, this was about earning the trust of the public. We want, as the RCMP, as a police force, wants to have the trust of the public. So it has several different strategies. It has outreach, it has communications, it has a transparency strategy. And from that, they have policies. That's where the connection is. We will not compromise on what we need to do to be trustworthy to the public. The same test works here. If you said, we do not compromise on transparency, that's not true. There are a lot of things that they can't make transparent for security reasons. So one of the way we know transparency is not the core value. It's not the one sitting in the background. So any comments on that? If you throw in the, just before I throw, I'm going to come to the principles now, but any thoughts on any of that? Some of you may have seen that spiel already, so. Okay, here are the principles now. Those are the old principles. So the question I'd like to put out for discussion is, are these new principles more saleable, being closer to values than the old principles are? Can we take these principles and have people understand where we're going and buy into, share that value? The principles do operate at different levels. So we do want to be careful. Number 6 here, transparency. This is not about transparency of information. It's about transparency of process, that our processes for managing information are completely transparent. And again, that's about trustworthiness. Good principles and do not tell you what to do. They set a stage for the other decisions you need to make. And let me give you an example. We have a principle in law that says innocent until proven guilty. That doesn't tell you what to do in any way, shape, or form, but it's a principle that will guide all kinds of other decisions that we make, innocent until proven guilty. So these principles that were all written were all produced by ARMA, all written in that way, that they would support our going to the organization and being able to sell IM better. Okay, so I'm going to leave them up, but can I have any thoughts there? Is this going to make things easier for us? I mean, this is the question that we could put at the end of last week's session. What do you think? But what do you think? Is this going to make things easier? Troy, how can you how do people let you know if they want to unmute or talk?
They can raise their hand and I'll allow to talk. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Want me to pick on someone? There, that's quiet.
Yeah, pretty quiet, Lewis.
Yeah. Actually, I was looking at Sheila because Sheila deals with all kinds of different organizations. So just from a consultant's perspective. So it's not just would my organization do it, but would a variety. Any thoughts, Sheila? Can I put you on the spot here? Who you have identified? She was there, not there?
She might not actually be there. Yeah, we can't tell.
Okay. Ken.
Ask away again, Lewis.
Yeah. Oh, there, you're here, but no sound, it says. Okay. Your mic's on.
Try now. She'll have to unmute if she wants to speak.
Okay, I just got an unmute button.
Excellent.
Okay, sorry. In all of that, Lewis, I lost the track of the question. Could you
Question
repeat
is, if the goal is to sell IM, the ultimate goal being to have it embedded in the culture, and that really is what ARMA is looking to do in the next, the angle it's pushing in the next while. Do these new principles help us get there more than the old ones? You want to think about it for a bit? I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No, I think they do. I mean, I thought the old ones did it as well. Although there was some things in the old ones that I, didn't really think needed to be there. But I mean, I think it's really clear through the revised list what you need, because some of the ones that were separate before have been combined. So I think it becomes a little bit more sort of higher level, and maybe some of the words become more attractive for people that are not in our industry. Because, when people see words like retention or disposition and stuff, that really doesn't tend to resonate with them. But when you start hitting them with like transparency and trustworthiness and those words that were not there before, although they were embedded in the principles, obviously, but when you actually call them out as individual principles, I think it might hopefully get more traction from people that are not in our industry, who might then say, hey, this is something we as an organization should be valuing and pursuing and making sure that we implement and sustain.
I think so. I would tend to agree. Other thoughts from people? I mean, Ken, you've looked at these for a while. I know you work on the committee that's looking at the next step down, implementing the principles. Are on the same committee. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I can add him to speak as well. 1 second.
Yeah, Ken's hand is up.
There you go.
Be able to hear me now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I was kind of keeping quiet because I am working on the committee rewriting this. And I really liked how you put this. Good to see you, Sheila. Hi, I'm waving. I like the idea that life cycle management is now covered by or replaces retention disposition for the exact reason that Sheila just mentioned. It connects a bit more. This isn't like a quantum leap forward or anything like this. It's just a little bit of a sideways step. So yeah, or like Irene says, it might be easier to get into the board of directors by having life cycle management, which connects easier. Other than that, at this point, I'm not seeing a ton of difference between the old and the new. Although I do like trustworthiness far better than integrity as well. So yeah, I'll stop here.
Oh, that's fair enough. And the old integrity was data integrity, information integrity. It wasn't human integrity. So it
Yes.
wasn't about, right? It wasn't about trustworthiness the same way. So that what that exercise that I just gave you a little bit back is that in and of themselves, these will not sway people unless you connect them to core corporate values. See, life cycle management, it's not a value. We do not compromise on life cycle management. That's not true. It's not going to resonate with anyone. What corporate value could we attach life cycle management to that would resonate with people? I think some of these are more connectable. Accountability, trustworthy. I guess they were before, but they seem to me, if from my perspective, the goal is to be able to trace them up to the value, because that's what we are all sharing in the organization. We have common values. The values produce a strategy. We have a common mission. Can they all chase to the strategy? Could you tie life cycle management as a principle here to the strategy of the organization? Carolyn, you want to expand on, see, you've got typed a good answer there, but.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, I see the point that these 7 principles perhaps are not, or not all of them are the values themselves. And so you take that one level up to identify the value. And in that way, have it resonate with people and get that buy-in.
Okay, fair enough. So, and we haven't seen what this will look like when I break it down. Protection, is protection a value or not? That is, if with the organization said we don't compromise on protection, I'm not sure you'd say that. It might be security or safety. We do not compromise on security. That people would buy into. And from there, there's a definite connection to protection. The notion of compliance ties very high to the policy of accountability. Actually, from my perspective, compliance ties to the corporate value of integrity. If the corporation is going to stand up and say, we have integrity, we followed the rules, we did it right, we didn't cut corners, we didn't cheat, we followed the book. In order to do that, they will need to have a strategy of compliance. In other words, they can't stand up and say that as an organization that they have integrity. So I do see a connection there. Rick, you were going to.
Yeah, Lewis, I just wanted to say that as well as some of those other things that we've been talking about too, there was a technical issue with the ARMA principles that was put in place by someone in headquarters in 2017, which was they took the original ARMA principles, which had done pretty well up to that point, and they modified them to say information governance principles instead of information records and information management principles. So we have taken it upon ourselves in this round, as you all know that are on the committee, we've taken it upon ourselves to move it back into position as the records and information management set of principles, as opposed to anything to do with information governance. Just wanted to say that it was a bit confusing for those who don't know the original ARMA principles very well. They went, what the heck? This isn't really information governance. It's like records and information management. So we are fixing that and have fixed that in the new updated principles. Just a technical thing.
Okay. Ken, you've just asked, would the value of integrity include these other areas? So from my point of view, I guess these different 7 principles, they're all facets that we look at the problem from. And yes, 3 or 4 of them could all trace up to a single value. You know, the connection to the value is so important, and we have a real life example of it where we're living today, because if the value doesn't ring true, all you'll get is grumbling. And a really good example of that is back to work legislation that all the governments have put people to across the country, because the value that they say this is about is productivity, and it doesn't ring true for people. Some of them say the value is team spirit, or office community communication, but it doesn't ring true. So they have yet to come up with a real value that people will say, yeah, I can understand why coming back to the office would be a good strategy for. We don't have that there. So it makes it really tough to get people to do it without grumbling. I mean, they'll do it, but they'll push back, in which case in the IM world, when they push back, you get passive resistance, you get workarounds, you get people not paying a lot of attention, things, everything being classified in one file, etc. Someone else had a comment or thought. Irene, yeah, that was an interesting comment. You want to raise that? You need to unmute.
Yeah, I said her so she could unmute if she wants.
Yeah. There you go.
Hi, sorry about that. I was helping out my husband with a question. So if you could repeat your question to me.
It's just what you had said. You made a comment, and I wondered if you just want to expand on that about easier to the board of directors.
It's interesting because I'm finishing up a master's of information governance, and my thesis is on how do we sell information governance to the boards and organizations, so it doesn't get buried under another part of the structure of an organization. Like information governance is in many times buried under IT. So yes, I like the new principles, and they make sense, as you've indicated, and some of the other audience members have, that if you can tie it back to values and therefore the strategic statements from the board level, then absolutely you'll get buy-in. But it's how you couch the words and tie it back to the values of the organization. And you're making some really good points, and I'm going, I might use a little bit of this in my thesis.
You're welcome to. A question for Rick, if I may. With this appealing to the directors, my sense was during this round of discussions that we had on the principles, there was a lot of talk about making sure that we understood the senior management as a stakeholder that needed to be able to see these as well. It wasn't just for RIM people. We need to be able to present them up and understand them. In previous iterations, was that also a focus, or is this more a focus this time?
Well, when we first wrote them in 2009 was when we wrote the ARMA Principles in the first place. And it was modified a couple of times along the way before 2017 when the words were changed irrevocably at that point to something that didn't exist or was wrong. But yeah, no, I don't think we saw it that way in the initial stages, Louis, but I certainly see it that way now. That to me, the prime directive is always to make sure that a RIM professional in an organization can take the results of the maturity model analysis, which will be coming later in the cycle, but take that analysis and be able to sell that to senior management in a rational kind of way. And I think that's a goal we should always keep in mind when we're working on the principles as a committee going forward as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I have a question actually for Ken again on what you've put through. You talked about when you work through the code of conduct, which is excellent because that absolutely says values that people want to aspire to and their strategy. When I used to do it, I would end up, some organization would say, well, we don't want to do it. We want to do it our way. And I had a very snarky response, which is probably not the best way to respond. Something like, okay, how does your way support the organizational strategy that we have that as well as our system that we're proposing? There might be a better way to do that. How do you get the organization to dovetail, to streamline once you've identified this through the code of conduct and their strat plan?
So that it was Sheila that brought it up, but that's if I'm doing a RIM assessment, one of the very first documents that I look at is their strategic plan, and I try to find out what their values are or strategic goals or blah blah blah, and then the vast majority of the time, the principles dovetailed right into those very, very clearly, especially the strategic ones like accountability, transparency, and compliance. They almost always connected right into the organization's values. And so I would say that at the very start, like my executive summary would be, you know what? These are your values. These are stated. And so this is how this connects to your values and to your stated goals. And quite often, if I had to do a presentation to a council or a committee, then that would be one of my lead-ins. This is why I'm talking to you people here today. And actually, this is very, very timely because I'm doing a set of policies for a quasi-governmental body, and I'm getting really, really no traction with them engaging in the review of the policies. So I think maybe I should have a chat with the chair and bring up again, hey, I need you to look at this stuff because this is in support of your values. So it's not just in the official documentation, but also in the communications with the organization that this kind of an approach can connect to the values.
Fair enough. I think the same way those HR people are so close to their swiping, their safety issue, that they just assume everybody understands the rules are about safety. I think we walk in with people understanding, well, this is about accuracy and accountability. If we're telling you to do something, it's because we care about information accuracy. But people don't. And I think we need to make that connection and use the wording of whatever it is that they've got in their strategic plan or in their code of conduct. Lifecycle management is a particular challenge, and we're finding it as we're trying to extrapolate it a little bit more and go deeper that it kind of overlaps other stuff. I think part of the thinking was that other groups lifecycle manage so that it's not a foreign concept to running a business. Do you think we'd get any more traction on that basis? Any thoughts? I mean, real property, facilities, they all life cycle manage. IT. Well, these are the tools we have to work with for the next while. Clearly retention, yeah.
I think you're right, Lewis. I think we certainly make a bit of ground there if we have a like term to what other important parts of the organization are actually doing. I think that helps us. in the end as an understanding point to at least start that discussion with those other areas. Because as long as they do understand in their business unit what life cycle management actually means, it'll help us. I think you're right. I think that's
You know what? I think we've spent a lot of time trying to understand the differences in our vocabulary with IT vocabulary. You know, things like archive and file and folder and all this kind of stuff. But we haven't spent much time looking at whether we reconcile our terminology with the other domains. And a particular example that comes to mind is the term assets and information assets. In finance, asset is something that lasts a year or longer. That's what an asset is. And if it's not an asset, if it doesn't last a year, it's a maintenance item. So their notion of assets is completely different, meaning if we talk about information assets and we have a totally different meaning, I think we need to be sensitive that for that group in particular, it has a different meaning. HR talks about assets, meaning people. Okay, they get it. And it's not has nothing to do with the length of time. But different domains have terms. Lifecycle management seems to be in use. Availability is a real tough one, I think. I don't know what you call that in other fields. I'm finding availability is a tough, it's further away from me from what the value might be at the end. I mean, obviously we know if the information is not available, then it's of no use. We get that, right? So it is a facet we have to look at. Available, accessible, well, all the other barriers need to be removed. You know, it needs to be in we have to have the software that reads it. But that's still our view, our facet on it. Trying to tie it to with strategy, unless your organization has some strategy like evidence-based decision making, which some organizations have.
I think, Louis, that the availability, often in my mind anyway, being an old IT guy, IT gets beat up a lot on whether things are available or findable by the people in the organization. It's all about that kind of ability to find things that linger around. And of course, the content has been so vastly increased over the last every year. It goes up exponentially, so makes it harder and harder to kind of find things there. And I think that's a word that IT gets beat up a lot about, is that availability as a tie-in to what we're talking about.
Devin, absolutely none of what I have said negates the need to expand on these and take them down. The same explanation you had before, you're going to need it and have people understand it. The question is, are people buying in or not? Is it part of the culture of the organization? Are people happy to do it because that's the way our organization works? Or are you getting pushback? If we're getting pushback, we need to reach to something bigger than ourselves. We need to reach up to a mutually agreeable point above us, like a strategy or a mission or a value that we share, and then work our way down, because that's our point of commonality. Otherwise, their agenda will trump your agenda in their eyes. And that's the reason for resistance. You know, one of the things that I think we should look at as we go forward, people who resist are also doing so based on certain values. And those values may be just as valid as our values. For instance, their value might be speed. That's because in their area, they value speed. They value quick turnaround time. They value instant action. That's important for them in their area. That's why they might resist something that you're imposing. Maybe they value convenience. which I don't think of as a core value in any way, but that would be the value they'd be fighting with you. Or independence, the ability of a business group to say, this is how we do things here. That's nice that you're trying to impose a system on us, but we have a special way we're independent. I think it's a valid value. It may not be able to outweigh what we're putting forward, but I think we need to confront that value, name it and confront it if we're going to get anywhere. Is there a guidance document for a sample of each of the statements? Yeah, funny you should ask. So maybe actually I'm going to throw Rick because you're closer to it. The two documents that are being built to back up these new principles. One that we're working on now, and then there's going to be a maturity model.
Yes. Yes, I mean, that's what we always had with the ARMA principles. From the original days, we created them in 2009. There was two components. There was the ARMA principles themselves, and there was the maturity model, which allowed someone to score basically how well their organization was doing in all of those various areas related to the maturity model. So that still has yet to be done in this new form. Once we finish the actual principles, we'll be working on the maturity model, and it'll be a much more detailed document, I think. I mean, again, we're not there yet, but it'll be a much more detailed document than the old maturity model was in the original ARMA principles. So it'll be quite helpful, I think, to all of those people that may not be helpful to everybody in this group, because there's a lot of very skilled and seasoned people in this group, ARMA group that's on this call. I mean, this is a lot of these people here is the kind of top of the top kind of folks in the country. So again, thank you. Those you draw the really knowledgeable crowd into your sessions, no question. So I think it's going to be important, though, for a lot of the demographic that's coming into ARMA now, the new demographic, which is people that don't really know as much about records and information management as many of you do or have done. I think it's going to be very helpful for them to help sell RIM to their organizations in a way that makes sense to their senior management teams.
Fair enough. All right, I want to look at another aspect of these principles, and that has to do with the problem we have gaining a seat at the table, especially while we're looking at AI and AI governance and the sort of fight with the data group and whatever you call. Can these principles help us identify ourselves in a way that's more meaningful to the organization? If you compared these two statements, a chef who says, I'm responsible for making dinner, I'm responsible for preparing the food, versus a chef that says, I'm responsible for the freshness of the food, I'm responsible for the balance of the nutritional balance of the meal, I'm responsible for the taste. Okay, so they're picking out very specific attributes. Anybody can prepare a meal. One of the things that's interesting about I think interesting maybe about AI problem is that we say that the information is not reliable, and if you ask the organization who wants to be accountable or responsible for making sure that this information is trustworthy, nobody's putting up their hand. And yet trustworthiness is one of the areas that we're going on. We obviously can't make the information trustworthy, but we can do lots of things that validate whatever system we put in place to try and get the most trustworthy information possible. So for you to say, I would like to be accountable for our systems that support the trustworthiness of this information, nobody's going to grab that from you. IT certainly isn't going to grab it from you. They don't care about the content. So are there other things here that if you say, okay, we're going to take responsibility for the systems that guarantee the availability of information. That's a hard one because we have search and classification, but half of that availability is based on IT stuff. Compliance, all kinds of people have their hands in compliance. For years, we said, and if you're aware, but I'm very fortunate to have been given the Brit Literary Award for this last year in 2025. And it was an article that I did on the magazine, which basically said we should stop saying we're responsible for managing information. We stop telling people that they're responsible for managing it and we're responsible for managing it. We've told people for years, everybody in the organization is responsible for managing information. So now we have AI coming up and we want a seat at the table and they say, okay, information governance, what do you do? And you want to say, well, we manage information. No, the last 20 years, you said everybody manages information. What exactly do you do that everybody else doesn't? A very specific answer that we have to come up with. I think that some of these are areas that we can expound on. We can't take 100% responsibility for the result, but we certainly can take responsibility for some of the systems that help validate the result. Some of them, some of them are beyond us completely, but I mean, some of them, I think nobody's going to compete. I would love to say we in IM, we're responsible for the truth of the information. Not that we guarantee that information is true, but that the systems that validate the truth of information, either at the capture point or at the storage point or the delivery point, that we have some degree of control over what those systems are. Some degree of influence maybe over what those systems are. That would help us be involved in guaranteeing the truth of the information, which is what people are worried about now. Ken, you have a very pensive look.
Oh, you can actually see me?
No, I'm sorry, Rick. I'm sorry. I saw your name, Ken. I'm looking at Rick. So sorry, I can't see.
I had a pensive look on my face too.
Okay, is that confusion or is that like?
No, what you're saying actually aligns very closely with CGSB 72.34, one of my favorite Canadian standards. The idea that the systems and the underlying structure are our in sharing with IT, and that's in the standard as well, that we are responsible for that underlying infrastructure and systems in order to ensure that this sort of stuff is happening properly. So that's interesting, and that's why I was pensive, because I was thinking about, I'm always thinking about what things don't fit and what things do fit and stuff like that. So very interesting.
IG systems, if you like, information management and records artifacts are areas that we have taken 100% responsibility, like a retention schedule. It's absolutely clear that we run the retention schedule and the file classification plan. Although that's more and more going the way of the dodo as areas of repositories are not worrying about classification anymore. Some areas do, but some areas don't. Yeah, Sam, that's right. But outside, there was a physical file plan. We ran, when we had physical files, we ran the artifact, which you might call the map of physical storage locations, if I can call it that. We don't run the map of virtual storage locations. That's an IT artifact. But the controlled vocabulary of the organization that makes sure the ontology that the information in the AI corpus needs to match against to make sure it works and reflects our business, we can own that. Different areas that we need to find, because we are going to lose our are standing at the table, if we cannot identify exactly what aspects or what attributes of information we're prepared to take responsibility for, and take responsibility for it simply means support the systems that go into place. If we cannot do that, I think it's going to be harder and harder to have an identity. I'm open to challenge on that. I'm certainly, I say that, but you know, there may be some of you that disagree there.
I don't think I would challenge you on that at all, Lewis, for sure. And from my side, I think this all ties this also ties into some of the new technologies, the AI side of things that are going to come along and make changes in organizations in a fairly substantial way over time. And the more we can stay at the table with everybody else. And I do see that happening more. I should say, I do see that happening more across the country right now, that people are getting dragged into, the RIM professionals are getting dragged into discussions about all kinds of things that we weren't being dragged into before. And I think I take that as a really positive kind of situation, believe me. So I think it's going to be important to, as you say, to stay with it and make sure you're at the table to help in some of these things.
Right. But the way to get there, I really firmly believe, is not to say that we prepare dinner, but to pick the areas that we're prepared to be responsible for, the taste, the nutritional balance, to name them. Name the areas, if just to say, well, we help the organization manage the information properly. Because the problem with that explanation is, well, what do you have when you have well-managed information? What is that? It's like trained squirrels. Okay, I got trained squirrels. What do they do? What do trained squirrels do? All right, I have well-managed information. Great. What does it do? Well, you can use it for this, you can use it for that, but it's not immediately obvious. Whereas if you were to take an attribute like the trustworthiness of the information, the accuracy of the information, the currency of the information, the fit of the information to our own business hierarchy, our business architecture, if you can take an attribute and match it, and here are 7 different attributes which fall into our laps. Are there any openings there that we can say, here's an area that we're going to take over?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important too. Right now, I know that we're ARMA and the people on the committees are staying in touch together. Like the IGIM group is certainly going to be working on the 3.0 version of IGIM later in this year. And I think that staying in touch and integrating the ARMA principles into that whole IGIM initiative later on is going to be really important, that it all meshes together properly in the end. Because as you say, Lewis, some of these things are far reaching. They touch a lot of different disciplines in the organization as well. And I think it's going to be important to make sure that we tie everything together with a nice bow in the end.
Yeah, Ken?
So I've been pensive again, and when you were giving your example of, you know, we're responsible for the physical data mapping, but we're not responsible for the virtual or data mapping. I actually disagree with that. I think we are responsible to know where data is and electronic information just as much as the physical, maybe even more nowadays as the physical information. But then that leads to touching on your metaphor of a cook. A chef also has sous chefs. So I see it as our responsibility sometimes to stick our head in the IT department and say, hey, have you accomplished what you need to do in order to ensure protection? Have you made sure that trustworthiness is up to snuff on your IT systems? And then at even the organizational level, because the way that the principles of accountability and compliance, the new ones, are written, that's not a RIM program accountability and compliance. It's an organizational level accountability and compliance, which I'm not totally comfortable with, but that's when RIM has to stick our heads in the C-suite and say, hey, are you people being accountable? Are you being compliant? Now, does that kind of mess with our standing and our position as records and information managers?
Grows, doesn't mess with, it grows it. I wondered when you said that it is our responsibility for the repositories, there's a very good argument to make there. I'm wondering, is there a difference between the attributes of a repository that IT would keep track of and the attributes of a repository that we in IM would keep track of? Is there a difference between tracking collections by content? We have a historical collection, we have a modern transactional collection, we have a reference collection versus the server architecture of what repository is housed on which server. Is that a reasonable difference to make?
Well, there are attributes which are different, certainly, but I don't think that they're paradigm breaking.
Okay. When when I was at industry, somebody wanted a place to put something. We got them finally to stop going to IT to ask for server space and to come to IM and ask for a repository so that we could get requirements of an information from that first. So certainly that's consistent with your argument that no, we really do have a major role to play in that map, even in the electronic world. Yes, I agree. Sheila, I'm sorry, I'm looking at Sheila's comment. I agree, absolutely. Listen, I appreciate everybody's response here. As I started out with, I don't have answers to a lot of this stuff. I can see where it's going to a certain degree, but I'm sure this is a discussion we're going to need to have over the next while. So I thank you for your time, your participation, and Troy, thanks for putting this together. All the mechanics of it, I know, are hard each month. And Rick,
Yep,
the
no, it went
administration of
smoothly.
it.
Yeah, thanks, Louis, very much for it. I must say it's very it was a very good presentation for me. It gave me a lot to think about, and which is your norm, right? You always want to leave everybody with something to think about. So it was very good for me, and I did really enjoy some of the thoughts, which I don't think I'd really had before. So thank you for that. Just I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here. Thank you for all who attend. Really appreciate you all being on. And again, I know lots of the names on the session, and so appreciate all of you for your knowledge and time in the records and information management business. Many of you are friends, longtime friends of mine too, so I really appreciate that. The next IMCC presentation will be available, coming out. Information on it will be coming out likely next week or the week after for the March timeframe. And of course, then we have RIM month in April after that. So there will be a little more in April for the RIM month celebration. And hopefully we'll have that for you soon. Again, thank you for supporting IMCC with ARMA across the country, in Canada here for Canadian content. And all of you have a really, really great rest of your week. Nick and Louis, thank you so much again for being on and doing a presentation for us. Troy, thanks for taking your day off and helping us out here. Really appreciate it as well.
Great, no, it went smoothly. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.